Nostalgia is such a unique emotion. Sometimes it makes me happy, sometimes it makes me sad, and a lot of the times it makes me both happy and sad at the same time, which seems like it should contradict one another or like cancel each other out, but it like doesn't. I feel both of those emotions at the same time. I started noticing I was struggling with the feeling of nostalgia in about high school, and I think that's probably when a lot of other people start to experience it, or at least first experience it as well. As we get more responsibility, life gets a little bit more demanding, and I guess like society and maybe social norms expect more of our energy and time to get dedicated to other things. I don't exactly remember how it felt in high school. However, I can imagine that there was a time when things got too demanding and you just remember what it's like to be as a kid and not have this responsibility, so you essentially long to go back to that. As things got a little tougher in high school, especially like the pressures of going to college and stuff, all I wanted to do was just sit on the couch and play Pokemon, kind of how I did as a kid. Even during high school, I still enjoyed my Pokemon games, however, it was different. I felt like it wasn't accepted and that I should be using my time otherwise to, I guess, essentially to sort of like progress my future, and playing this game didn't really do that. And I played a lot of other games at the time as well, like even Call of Duty and stuff, and that was different because I played with friends and things, but when I played Pokemon, it was just me. And I think looking back, I obviously needed me time, and I think everybody does that. It does need that as well. However, I didn't necessarily have that state of mind back then, understanding that sometimes you just need you time. I understood I needed it, or I had the feeling that I needed it. I just didn't understand that it was necessarily acceptable at the time, but looking back, it was. Moving on to college, though, like responsibility, pressures of social society and things got a lot more stressful and even got pretty overwhelming at times. And that only increased the nostalgic emotion, however we want to describe it or categorize it. I started to collect even more Pokemon cards and even Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and I played more and more of the games and even started making a lot of videos about it. During this time, I was starting to kind of control the emotion of nostalgia. However, I didn't quite tame it just yet. During high school, I was experiencing nostalgia like a lot of people, obviously, but it kind of just hits you, though. You know, when you first experience something, you don't know exactly what to do with it. At least at the time, I just did what felt natural, and that was just to play some Pokemon games, you know. But during college, I kind of understood more what the emotion was, what it meant, why I was kind of thinking about it, and just kind of learning to accept that sometimes it makes me happy, sometimes it makes me sad, but it doesn't mean it's a bad thing necessarily. After college, though, feeling of nostalgia was the worst, because for the first time in my life, I was done with school, college. There was no more formal, really, education that I had to do, which seems like it would be less stressful. However, maybe it was at the time, but mentally it wasn't. Because for the first time in my life, I was done with school forever. Every year since I was a kid, every September marked the beginning of a new year in a sense, because it was the start of a new school year. You know, new classmates, new classes, just something different kind of to look forward to and experience. However, now that I was done with college, there was no new adventure really that I was required to do. It was kind of just get a job and then be a part of society, and that in itself is kind of an adventure, you know, but it was definitely a lot different of a feeling. I haven't really been able to fully understand or be able to elaborate or explain that feeling of there is no more school or adventure at the start of September. And I haven't really been able to put that into words, and I kind of stopped trying because it's hard to formulate the thoughts and then even try and make someone else understand. But I think at least several of you, possibly many, also understand that same feeling. After graduating college in that first August, September time, that was really weird, and it felt like that there was nothing new. There was no new adventure coming in the future, and there's nothing excited to be about, and everything that was exciting and fun was in the past. And I definitely longed to go back to that and kind of maybe wish I appreciated it more when I was in that time. Looking back on all that, this video maybe seems depressing, but the word selection for the title is definitely very critical and fitting. I first heard of the term solace in freshman year of college. My good friend Rob, he played a song by Eden called Circles. And this is a very powerful and moving song. And at the time too, Eden really wasn't popular at all. I'm very happy him as an artist got popular. His music is wonderful. But he used the term solace in the song, and that was the first time I ever heard that word, and I didn't understand or know what that meant. So when I looked it up, it's like finding comfort in a time of distress or sadness. I can't say for sure at the time, but I would say with pretty high probability or certainty that I connected the word solace with nostalgia, because when I was feeling nostalgic, it almost felt like I was sad or down because I wanted to go back to the past. But by playing games or Pokemon games or looking at my cards, or even just reflecting on moments in the past, brought me comfort in the present time. And I think to me that was a perfect way, or very beautiful way, to connect two words that are very specific in my opinion to help explain to myself and understand what I was feeling and how to kind of tame it, or I guess just understand it for lack of better words. Over the last few years, I've really, I would say, been able to control the feeling of nostalgia and almost accept it. And you can kind of say this with any emotion. I guess let's talk about happy or sad, because I think it'll better explain maybe this, accepting nostalgia. Sometimes you can be happy about things, even things that might seem dumb or whatever, but you allow yourself to be happy in those moments because you know it's probably the right emotion to be. When something good happens, you're happy. You can accept it. Same thing with sadness. When there are times too when I'm sad or down, and you could let yourself be sad just as you can let yourself be happy. It doesn't mean you're weak or it's wrong, but you can allow yourself to feel certain things because you're just human, you don't. It's kind of hard to just ball everything up and push things off. Sometimes you just have to feel certain things. And I bet there is the contrary to this. I don't want to continue or go on a side tangent, but you can accept being sad and things like that, but don't let it control your life. And I think that, again, that's the part of accepting things. You can't be happy all the time, can't be sad all the time, but you can accept that you can be at certain times. With nostalgia, I have found that I can accept it at times, but I'm not going to let it kind of snowball in negative directions or even overly positive directions where it's a little bit out of control or consuming me. There were definitely times throughout high school and college, and I guess more specifically after, where the feeling of nostalgia was incredibly negative and overpowering or overbearing, where it was very hard to deal with. The problem isn't feeling sad or nostalgic for things or even some other emotions that maybe are perceived to be negative. The thing that's important is understanding why you're experiencing it, and then how to accept it or deal with it in that moment and not let it affect other parts of your life. How I accept or rationalize kind of nostalgia in my own mind is it's just a part of life. We're bound to want to go back to simpler times, or what seems to be at this current moment in time that the past was more simple. However, nothing lasts forever, nor should it. Because if something did last forever, it wouldn't be as special or desirable right now. I mean, yeah, being a kid and having very little responsibilities is great and all, but I mean, even as a kid, we long to be older, and how we probably are today. It's just, the grass isn't always greener. There are things that probably in our childhood weren't as amazing either, but it doesn't make anything that in this current present moment any less significant. I'm gonna be looking back on this moment in my life and feel nostalgic for it at some point in my life. Another way that I kind of deal with nostalgia, or maybe accept it and not move on from it, but how I tackle the emotion, is that one thing I want to do is have kids, and I want to give them a great life in their early childhood. because my childhood, I would say, was quite amazing, and that's why I long to go back to it so often. And I want to make sure that my future kids have a very similar experience. And to me, that gives myself like a current goal now and for the next like 10 years whenever I do actually have kids. And it makes life very purposeful right now and in the near future. I mean, this conversation could go on for a very long time, specifically discussing that, but having kids, I think, is very important for a large majority of people because there's so much you can learn about yourself and just the world through having kids that, to me, it seems too important to not do. I do want to give them like a journal too and start writing stuff in them, kind of similar to what I'm doing now, but I want them to start young so they can look back on their lives as a kid more vividly than maybe I did. And again, I did journal as a kid, but not as much as I should have, so I definitely want to maybe push that on them, but in like a rewarding and fun way, you know? Definitely don't want to make it feel like a chore. You can still enjoy things from your childhood, and it'll never be the same as it felt as it was as a kid, but again, why should it? Like, I still play my Pokemon games now. Obviously, we got a whole bunch of videos on the channel, and it's definitely different now than it was, and it felt more pure or innocent maybe as a kid, but I'm still having a great time still playing the same games. It's just kind of maybe mindset or a change in perspective, but it doesn't make it less important than it was as a kid. It just makes it a little bit different. So don't feel like you can't play games or do, maybe I'm not gonna say childish things, but things that you've done in your childhood, you can still do them today, just it won't be the same. It'll feel different. You can try and replicate it, but don't try too hard. You know, some things you just gotta enjoy in the moment, not overthink things necessarily. The fall time or autumn time in the northeastern United States is so nostalgic for me, again, because every September was pretty much a new school year, so a whole new adventure in my life. But just like the temperature gets colder, it gets a little bit more cozy. Just leaves are falling, the smell, the wind when it brushes leaves over concrete, all that, man, that sparks so much nostalgia and emotion in me. And that gets really heavy. So like in this autumn, I spent a good amount of time, not a lot of it, but a good amount, sitting outside, drinking some nice warm tea, just listening to the wind and feeling a little bit of the chill on my skin, just playing some Pokemon. Like, I think a lot of people might understand what I said, but like that feeling in that moment is like almost acceptance, if that makes it like I am living in the present right now, or I guess more specifically talking about like the last few months in autumn, just experiencing the reality, feeling the like weather outside, playing an old game that's from like my childhood, and just like enjoying the moment, understanding that you can't go back in time, accepting that what was beautiful and memorable, but also appreciating it, and I guess more like appreciating the past, but also the present, because I'm able to, I guess, reflect on it in a more meaningful and significant way. That was kind of very long-winded. Hopefully the point got across there, but something as simple as that, like that just makes like the whole like week for me. Like that is a highlight of the week. Something as simple as that. So kind of recapping or bundling up the video, nostalgia is something that brings happiness and sadness, and I think different people maybe experience it differently. I'm obviously talking about me specifically. It can bring me happiness and sadness at the same exact time. It's like this like sine wave of emotion where any moment is gonna flip-flop. The longingness to go back to childhood or simpler times is so strong, but you can find, or I have found, comfort in accepting that I can't go back, but appreciating it right now and in the moment by doing things like playing the games or sitting outside and just living in the moment, I think is probably a good way to sum it up a little bit, and just kind of just like spending time pondering, thinking about it. And I think kind of come full circle in a sense in my own life. Like again, it's mostly positive now, I would say. The nostalgia I feel is mostly positive, not all the time obviously. Sometimes it gets very negative and just like depressing, but I would say majority of it, probably 90% of the time, it's positive. It feels good, and just kind of accept it, you know. We can't go back in time, but that doesn't make anything we do in this current moment less significant or unimportant compared to like the past, because right now could be one of the best times in your life as well. You just don't know yet, because you don't know what the future has and how you're going to look back on it then. Because even as a kid, I knew my childhood was pretty good, but I didn't think I'd be still thinking about it like 15-20 years from now. I want to leave you all with one important but yet simple quote. This is, I think, a Dr. Seuss quote or a similar one, but don't be sad, it's over. Be happy, it happened. Very powerful, very simple. Take care, everybody. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Got a lot more other videos on the channel. Hopefully I will see you all in some other video.